right now, of course, with the tariffs, there is a lot of uncertainty by myself, or I'm questioning myself. So can I do this? Take the responsibility and what? But always when I open the door in the morning and come to the company and see my people, and we call this the Thermoplan family. I know this sounds a little bit crazy. I understand, but together, creating new ideas and finding solution for opportunities and sometimes also challenges, I think that's the core of my business. At the end, it's all about the people.
This was Adrian Steiner, CEO of Thermoplan. Welcome to the Coffee Chronicles, the podcast series in which Deloitte explores the trends, innovations, and personalities of the coffee industry. I'm Daniel Laude, and today I have the pleasure of speaking to Thermoplan CEO Adrian Steiner. As a Swiss manufacturer of professional coffee machines, Thermoplan supplies Starbucks and other players in the coffee industry. Having navigated several crises in its history, Thermoplan is renowned for its agility and innovation. In fact, the company is currently facing another challenge: the US tariffs on goods produced in Switzerland. The following conversation has two parts. In the first part, Adrian shares the story how Thermoplan became Starbucks' exclusive supplier of coffee machines and his strategy to diversify their customer base when he became CEO. In the second part, we will talk about the impact of the current US tariffs on Thermoplan's business and a beverage that presents a new opportunity in the Far East and all around the globe. Enjoy our conversation. Adrian, thank you very much for inviting me today to your beautiful offices here in Weggis.
So welcome.
Lake of Lucerne. I'm very happy I could take the trip here to your office, to your factory, to see all the processes that you have in place to install the Swiss high-quality coffee machines that we'll talk about in the next half an hour, 45 minutes. And let me welcome you to the podcast, The Coffee Chronicles.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a privilege to be here. And we have the saying, so we enjoy to work in a place where others enjoy their vacations. So that's a place to be. And I think that's one of the secrets to have inspiration and invest a lot into new ideas and innovation.
We'll talk about innovation, New ideas. But let's start at the beginning. I like to start with a personal question. I've read or heard that you are an early riser. You wake up very early in the morning at 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 5 is a good time for me, yeah.
What's the first beverage that you usually have in the morning? Is it a coffee? Is it a tea? Is it something else?
Yeah, it's maybe a little bit disappointing, but the first beverage I enjoy is a glass of water. So I really like to enjoy a glass of water for my breakfast. And then, of course, when I go to the company, it's also not a ceremony, but then together with my team, with my board members, I enjoy every morning a cup of coffee together. And I think it's important to myself to enjoy coffee in a good audience, together with good people, and have a perfect start into the new day.
I'm also enjoying one cup from your cafeteria today, and I must say it's very tasteful. Let's start at the beginning. When you started at Thermoplan, you were 21 years old, and you were the 21st employee in 1998, if I've researched that correctly. And only 1 year later or 2 years later, you started the first partnership of your company. Before Thermoplan, I think until 95 was in the business of milk foamers and such. Yeah. And then you made a turnaround, and 1 year after you joined in 1999, you started the partnership with Starbucks. Can you give me that story, how these Swiss machines made it into all the cafes worldwide of Starbucks? How did that happen?
Yeah, of course, it's a very interesting story. And just some words to Dominic and Esther Steiner, the founder of the Thermoplan company. So Thermoplan was founded in 1974, and it's a very interesting story about transformation. So reinventing the business model. This is something which was always in the DNA of Thermoplan, and Dominic was always the driver of that. So he started on, the first business was to design and install kitchen equipment. So complete something different. And then in the early 80s, he had the idea together with some engineers to design a cream whipping machine, which is something not so sexy, but very, very helpful because at the time, hygiene reason and the operator friendliness. This was a big opportunity, and he recognized this and invested from this transformation from designing and installing equipment to design and produce equipment. So it was a big transformation in the 80s, and then in the 90s, they recognized the trend of the cappuccino coming more and more from the south to the northern part of Europe and the rest of the world. And they thought, of course, when you have an equipment to produce whipped cream, maybe to whip the milk, is there also some technologies to create this nice foam? And they did it, and early 90s, as I said, the milk foaming device was designed and produced in our facility, very small company at the time. And then I think the biggest transformation was in 95 when Dominic decided, now I have whipped cream, now I have milk, something is missing. And then he thought the coffee. Coffee is so interesting, but not just design a new coffee equipment, also on a modular basis. So to integrate the milk into the coffee due to this cappuccino trend, this was his vision. And by the way, he was 63 years old at the time. So one or the other person is already thinking on the third part of their life and getting soon retired. But he was doing this all-in mentality and invested all his money in his vision to design a modular coffee equipment. Modular due to the fact, so sliding in the hydraulics, the mechanics, and the milk part device, and of course the electronics on a drawer system. This was his idea, and this was the USP to the point you just mentioned, who was also exciting Starbucks. And coming to this story, it was when I started, actually it was November 97, and then one of my first topics was to present this just brand new designed black and white machine to the trade show IGO. IGO was the trade show at the time, an international exhibition for kitchen equipment in Basel. And then, of course, we went to Basel with this equipment and installed it in our booth, and we're just waiting for customers. You can imagine at the time, so very young, very unexperienced, and our competitors from Switzerland were already 60 or 70 years in the business with building fully automated coffee equipment, and they thought, Steiner, what do you want with coffee equipment? There is already plenty of coffee equipment on the market, and we were not so confident at the time to present it, but just see what happens. And it was on the second day of this exhibition. It was 3 visitors from the US. It was Peter, Paul, and Larry. It was not Mary, it was Larry at the time, Larry Eister. And they introduced themselves and said, we are from Starbucks. Matter of fact, we did not know who is Starbucks at the time. So it was, for us, not a huge market research story behind, but of course welcomed these gentlemen. And they told us that they are looking for automatization. So automatization on coffee equipment was the key for them because they used traditional coffee equipment from Italy, which were very labor intense. And due to the fact they grow very fast at the time, they already had almost 10,000 coffee shops in the US. We were asking, really 10,000 coffee shops? That's unbelievable for us. It was coming from our world. It was never heard something about that. And then they said, we open so many new stores and it's so hard to train the baristas, the partners and operators on the equipment, but also having endured the consistency on the quality, in-cup quality, they wasted a lot of time. And the biggest problem for Starbucks at the time was the speed of service. So customers were waiting, all the waiting line was going out of the door. And that's the reason why they were looking for a fully automated coffee equipment. And we said, here we are. We have a new designed concept, and we showed them the modular system and the coffee machine. Somehow they were impressed by this system because you can imagine when you have a coffee shop using a coffee equipment, and if the coffee equipment is breaking down, so coffee shop is out of business. And with our drawer system, you can exchange the modules within a couple minutes. So if something breaks down or maintenance has to be done, we ensure availability. And this was something was very interesting for customers like Starbucks at the time. Of course, they went into all other manufacturers and our competitors and manufacturers. They told us who is Starbucks. So it was this topic on this EGO in '97. And in '98, Larry Eister, he was calling us and said, "Yeah, you remember Larry Eister?" And we said, "Of course, we remember." And he was asking, "Are we interested to participate an RFP, request for proposal and information?" And we said, "Yeah, of course." Then we gave our concept. In total, it was 14 manufacturers. So one for a manufacturer who were able to give them these projects and ideas. And they choose the 3 manufacturers to do a field test. So it was Bremer, a German manufacturer, Frankie from Switzerland, and Thermoplan. So the 3 of us, we got the opportunity in '98 to install 2 coffee machines in a coffee shop at Starbucks, and we were chosen to install it in Vancouver. It was then in August '98, and for 6 months, a trial period. Yeah, it was interesting because you can imagine this black and white coffee machine was designed for a world we have known, and this was the restaurant Sternen and the restaurant Victoria and the restaurant Rössli. And we installed this designed coffee equipment, and we learned and recognized, Starbucks is different. So there is even on the cup size. So it's the beverages were huge at the time, and also the recipes are completely different, and most of all, the speed of service. So I remember we installed the machine at the time. It was 2,800 watts of power. After these 6 months, with all the upgrades we have done, we ended up with 4.2 kilowatt. So it was a transformation to the customer need and specifications, but learning on the field. So of course, today we don't do this anymore, learning and upgrading this in the field, but it was a very interesting time, and to be agile and flexible and listen to the customer and find technical solutions. That was the key. That was also actually then by the end of the field test, it was early '99, where Starbucks decided to go globally, exclusively with Thermoplan equipment.
And that was because you guys adjusted so well to
Absolutely. So you need a concept of the machine, which is unique. Our USP, this modular system, this was a huge advantage, or still is a huge advantage to our customer. But then also listen very carefully to the need of your customer and find solutions, and on a fast response. I think that was the key, and all this was invested from our side. It felt as it was our project, and we worked also this way. So we were like we do it 100% in, all in, and we worked very long days, long nights, and invested big money without any commitment from the customer. I think that makes a difference, and at the end it was convincing Starbucks at the time in '99. When we started the negotiation of the contract, we were 31 employees, and Starbucks were 30,000. And can you imagine how much risk that the management were taking at the time to put not all eggs in one basket, but it was feeling almost like that. So coffee equipment is key, a core of coffee shop, and trusting in this partnership with this very small family-owned company behind the mountains in Switzerland. This was a very interesting decision from Starbucks, but also for Thermoplan, because it changed everything at our company.
And was that ever an issue that they were, as you just said, 1,000 times your size?
Yeah, it was, of course, the personal relationship. This is what always was following since day one with Howard Schultz at the time. Now, of course, with Brian, always a direct connection to the CEO at the time, also to the founder and owner, Howard Schultz. And I think that was the key for the success. But when I take the words from Howard, it was, Starbucks, we are big like a giant and we move like a giant. And we need partners who are solving our issues. So, for example, over the time, we installed 63,500 coffee equipment. That's the install base right now in these 86 countries. And they opened many, many, many countries since 99. And all the time, Starbucks were able to open their coffee shops, doesn't matter where on the globe, on time. I think that this flexibility, this is recognized by Starbucks and a big value of Thermoplan. So we were always finding solutions to enable Starbucks doing their core business and Starbucks with their power and their strong vision. And of course, number one in the coffee shop industry. This was a good match and worked out very well. Now we have 544 employees and Starbucks has 650,000 employees. So we were growing together.
You said you just used the words good match. It was not always like this, or there were some challenges I heard. Can you tell that story when you were in the negotiations? I think in the final stretches of the negotiations.
Yeah, there are always challenges, especially I remember this time it was then 99, early 99, when we started these contract negotiations. And you can imagine, so Starbucks, they have had at the time more than 80 lawyers and Thermoplan, 0. So we had a collaboration with an external lawyer. So it was very intense. And this back and forward on contract negotiations, we all know. But then we agreed it would be easier to sit on a table and finalize the contract. And at the time, so it was Peter Tremblay. He was staying in the US, and Paul Dickerson and Larry Eiser, still the same person from beginning. They were for 1 week in Venice. It sounds funny, but it was with the time difference. We negotiated here in Venice during the day, of course, and in the afternoon, we were sending this document or the draft of the contract over to the US by fax, the telefax system, which, of course, probably most of the people don't know anymore. Just me as an older version. And then they were waking up in the US, and then they were using these templates and building a response to that and sending it overnight. So we had the next morning already the answer to the points we were proposing, and this was working quite well. So on Friday we had the key points aligned, and we were ready to celebrate. And I think that's something we like to do anyhow, still like to do in Switzerland, to use the momentum and celebrate it. So we invited then Larry Eiser and Paul Dickerson to go up to the Mount Rigi. Actually, there is a cable train, and there is a tourist offer to have dinner in the cable train. And with the view, it's a wonderful, making a little bit advertisement for the tourist region, Vierwaldstätter See. And we were on the way up. We had aperitif and then some starters. Then Larry Eister, he received a phone call. He was one of the few persons who already had a cell phone. And he was talking to the team from the US for us, it was quite a long time. It was about 20 minutes. And he was coming back and he said, the negotiations are failed. So Starbucks will not agree to what Thermoplan has proposed, and this project is over. So it was not really helping for the atmosphere, and we were shocked. So it was, how come? So and of course it was not a detailed feedback from Starbucks, but they said Starbucks is not willing to accept this, and the project is over. Okay, so we accepted it as you only can do, and went down by cable train, and there was not a huge appetite for eating the rest of the meal. And we did what we always did in a moment like that. We went to the bar. So we went to the jazz bar together, of course, with Paul Dickerson and Larry Eiser, and were drinking for the whole night. And then after midnight, for sure, I don't know exactly, or don't remember exactly the time, we were staying outside of the bar and having a cigarette, and at the time we were smoking, and then we burned the contract, because we still had one copy of us with us, and we burned the contract. We put the burned pieces into an envelope,
The ashes,
and sending it to Seattle, to the First Avenue, to the headquarters of Starbucks. It was, for us, like it was feeling like a ritual. We invested almost 2 years. Almost 2 years, 1.5 years. And this is now over and is failed. And it was just feeling right to burn this contract and send it over. And that's it. Looking what happens in the future.
how did they react?
1.5 week later, we received a phone call, and they told us to come over to Seattle. Dominic and myself, of course, we went into the airplane and flew over to Seattle, and something has changed. When we arrived at the SSC, the Seattle Starbucks Support Center, yeah, that's the right name, it was not the mid-management, it was the top level on the table. So it was Howard Schultz, it was Arthur Rubenfeld. So far, our negotiations was not on the top, but we were welcomed by the top, these executive leaders. And after welcoming, Howard Schultz told us, please explain why you are burning a contract of Starbucks and sending this back to us. So no one has done this ever before. And this was our explanation. And I think still Dominic did this perfectly well, because he explained, Howard, we believe we only can be partners when we have a contract who is possible to be fulfilled. So we had 3 points we could not agree. One was we insisted on Swiss francs, on the currency.
Currency risk, yeah.
It was too big to this risk to be carried by us. The other was the payment term was 10 days, ex works, so even before the equipment arrives in the US. And then the third was product reliability. About it was not only if something happens in the store, it was if the machine breaks down and they are not able to serve coffee, so compensation of loss of their business. That's the right word. And we said, so these 3 points, of course, we can sign this contract, but we cannot fulfill it. We are too small for that. We have no bank, we have no support who are even willing to do this. And this was then on the way back to the airport. So Arthur Rubenfeld, he drove us to the airport, and he told us, so Howard liked very much the partner. And for us, this was okay. That's good. That's very, very good for us, because we only can be partner when we agree to a contract which we can fulfill. When we arrived back home, I remember this very well, we already had the order and the payment, so the payment on the account and the order on the telefax of 3 containers. So we were able to source the materials we needed for this 3. At that time, 1 container were 84 machines, which was huge for us. Never had such a huge order. So we already had the order, and we had the prepayment from Starbucks to be able to fulfill our obligations on the contract. So it was
3 containers, that's 250 machines.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just as a starting point, a huge commitment, and I think this is the foundation of our partnership. So it was always, as you said, there are always challenges, even today, and that's good. But having a foundation on partnership where you understand what is the challenge of our customers to find solution, but also the customer is able to understand what is the challenge of the supplier of the partner like Thermoplan to act accordingly. I remember later, it was then of course early 2000, it was a growing curve, extremely steep. 2008, Thermoplan was doing more than 74% of the turnover with one customer. Financial crisis, we all remember. And I think all this we managed due to the fact that Starbucks is and still is a wonderful partner. Of course, it's a big company, but it's a huge trust, a huge personal relationship and commitment of both sides. So also Thermoplan, everybody knows what it means and how important a customer like Starbucks is to us. Right now, of course, we don't have this 74% anymore. It's down to 34% of the total turnover, but it's still, Starbucks means for me, it's there are 120 employees relating directly to this customer. So we have, of course, we have contracts, but there is much more than just a contract. So everyone and everything can be replaced. And the same is with Thermoplan, with Starbucks, everything can be replaced. We just have not to give any reasons to be replaced, to fulfill, of course, obligations, that's clear, but to understand their challenges much better and find solution before the challenges or the problems appear. I think that's the key. Yeah, we work now since 26 years exclusively with Starbucks on a global base. And I'm still very, very proud and happy to be the partner of Starbucks. It's they treating us over all these years like partners.
You just said that at some point, I think early 2000s, 75% of your business was Starbucks. And then a little later, as you said, 2008, financial crisis hits.
Yeah.
2009, you take over from Dominic Steiner, the position of CEO, who, Dominic, by the way, not related to you, but your kind of mentor, if I can say it like that. At which point did you realize, or did you make this transition from having this huge associated risk with one customer to a multi-customer base? How was that?
It was and still is. As a human being, we are in a comfort zone, as always. Of course, we try to be flexible. We invest a lot into innovation, but real transformation only happens when you are under real pressure. That's a human being. So this is my experience this 28 years in this company. So we always knew that it's not smart to have more than 70% of the turnover with one customer. So you don't have to study to recognize this. And still, with this huge growth we had, we were more than 100% absorbed of our energy, delivering, producing all these thousands and thousands of coffee machines for around the world. So there was always afterwards, I would say, the excuse, we did not have time to do innovation and look for other customers. Until the moment I just explained, 2008, I stepped into the role of the CEO. So it was also the generation transformation at Thermoplan. It was clear for Dominic was a real, I don't know, it's an English patron. And we reached almost the head count of 100. So it was clear for me. I was 32 years old at the time, and I took over the responsibility. And And it was clear I need a team. I need strong pillars who support me on topics where I'm not so strong, like finance and marketing. So I'm electrical engineer. So that's my heart and blood. And so it was clear I need to transform the organization. And then what happens was it was in March 28. It was the shareholders meeting in Seattle. And again, Howard Schultz, he announced in 2008 that all machines at Starbucks will be replaced with the newest generation. The machine name was Mastrena at the time. So it was a huge, really, all machine has to be replaced. So we were very, very happy in March. We were hiring people. We were actually opening a new production facility for that. We were sourcing a lot of components, boilers and cables and pumps and whatever you need. And we started producing, like always, 100%. And this started very well early summer. And then in September, we all remember, the bubble was bursting in the US. And it was from one day to the other, it was a complete stop. So Starbucks, as their home market, was the biggest market in 2008. So they stopped all the orders, and actually Starbucks closed at this 2008, early 2009, more than 1,000 coffee shops only in the US. So it was for our customer the biggest, or one of the biggest crises. Meanwhile, we have had some other crises, but it was hitting them so hard. It was clear. So it's like from 100 to 0 also for us as a supplier on the production side. I think that was the wake-up call, and this was the starting point of this transition, to your point. So 2008 was really the wake-up. So now we need new products, new customer relationships. And out of this time, we started the project with Nespresso, one other customer. So in the P2P business, so with the pets. So we started developing, and early 2010, we delivered the first equipment to Nespresso, and 2 years later, we started the project with Costa Coffee, which is also a huge customer by now. So they are owned now by Coca-Cola, and there we invested in a project or concept for premium vending, also to have a much more stable customer portfolio. And I remember when I did the strategic communication and the vision, it was coming from that time that maximum 50% of our turnover we want to generate with our, we call this OEM, so that we design and produce an equipment, sometimes also production line, for a customer on a global base, but always exclusive. And that was, of course, Starbucks for coffee shops, Nespresso for all the portion systems, and Costa, Coca-Cola for premium vending. And this was the maximum 50%, and the other 50% we do on the turnover with our own brand, the Black and White. We have had 2 different product lines at the time. Now we have a third, but very simple. I think our values, they always have been important, but since this time, getting even more important. I think the flexibility, as I said, that's so important. So to stay agile, and then enthusiasm, so to have fun of what you do, and I think the simplicity, that's something, the third value we have, simplicity, to design and produce simple, of course innovative, but simplicity means also for us the whole customer experience. And only if you design user-friendly equipment, they will be successful. And user-friendly means simplicity. And I think you can see this by many, many products you use every day. If the product is too complicated, you have no fun to use it, and then you look for alternatives. I think that's very important. And with these values, we succeeded to make this turnaround. And this was also interesting because Starbucks stopped the orders it was then the fall 2008. And then we had a meeting again with Howard Schultz early 2009. And after the welcoming, his first question was, how many machines do I need to buy from you so that Thermoplan and the supply chain will survive? And I think that's another example of partnership and interest on what are the challenges of the customers. Because he told us, I don't know how long this crisis will be. I expect this will be shorter than we expect. But I know after the crisis, then you have to be ready. You have to have a supply chain who works. You have people want to invest. People want to get back to the point they have been and even beyond. And that was very true. So in summer 2009, it was already starting this getting back to normal and even better than before. I think that was absolutely true. And so we knew that by month it was 350 machines. It was about 20% of our capacity. So it was helping for our supply chain and Thermoplan to survive, to keep the know-how, to keep the employees, to keep, as I said, the good suppliers. But yeah, it's tough. And I think the good thing is you always learn from that. And when I remember back in the 2014 with the strong Swiss franc or weak euro, with the bottom line at the time, the discussions, and then of course we all remember 2019 or early 2020 with the COVID, and so short after the whole supply chain issues we have had, the logistic challenges, the war in Europe, and now we are here with the tariffs. Here we are.
Getting out of the crisis together and partnership. I think another nice example. Let's fast forward a little bit to the future, but let's look at the one crisis before, what was the COVID-19 pandemic. I think there you also have a nice example for navigating the crisis in partnership. You got a very strange phone call, a very strange request. Can you tell that story?
Absolutely, yeah, it's my pleasure. So, of course, we all remember how challenging this uncertainty was during the COVID time, because you did not know what to do with wearing masks and the distances and so on and so on. But at the beginning, it was so brutal. Remember the pictures from north of Italy, Bergamo, and all this, and this was the time. So I received a phone call from the senior vice president of sourcing. So it was Hans Mellot. He was responsible for the whole procurement over the whole Starbucks group. He was calling me and said, "Hey, Adrian, I have a question. Can Thermoplan design or develop and produce ventilators?" I said, ventilators to help. You have seen the pictures, Bergamo, but it was almost the same situation in the greater area of New York and the US. So they have had a shortage of these ventilators, and I said, "Pooh." So it's in the medical industry, of course. It's challenging, but we have no clue about designing, developing, and producing a med tech product. Why are you asking me? And Hans was very clear on his response. He said, I don't trust the US industry. I know that the car industry is looking at that. I know Tesla is looking at that, how to build a ventilator. But if somebody can do it, then Thermoplan." And wow, that was such a clear statement for me. Of course, then you cannot say no. So it was. I remember it was a Friday evening or early day for Hans at the time, and I said, "Okay, let me think about that and have a chat on Monday." And I remember at the time Thomas, he was the head of R&D And I called. No, I was walking over to the R&D department and said, "Hey, Thomas, we have to talk. We have to." I explained him the situation with Starbucks, this huge emergency situation, and maybe I have an idea. Let's talk tomorrow. And it was then Saturday, and the younger people, of course, they have done this at that time, but they still do. They do the whole research over over the web, over Google, and of course, probably today you would also ask ChatGPT, but Thomas was founding an open source development from the MIT, from Boston University, how to build a ventilator. Of course, this sounds now very simple, but at least we learned that a ventilator is not so complicated. So this means, of course, you need a bag with the air, and you need a pump, you need a mechanical movement. And we decided, even on Saturday, not on Sunday morning, we met at the company and with our R&D. So 1/4 of our stuff is working in the R&D. So we have a lot of mechanical, but also software engineering. We have prototyping, we have 3D printers and stuff like that. And on Sunday morning, we said, let's try this model, which was explained by the MIT, and see what happens. And with the 3D printing, it was not so complicated to have a physical idea of what it needs to build a ventilator. And of course, it takes a while until these parts are printed. On Monday, we assembled it, and we had a first software to start it. And we recognized with the construction, which was recommended from the MIT, this doesn't work. There are too much forces on these elbow fittings, and it was always breaking. And then the team was saying, yeah, but one of the core know-how of our coffee equipment is the brew chamber is moved by a linear motor drive way over a spindle, a drive spindle. And they said, that's much better system to absorb or to convert the forces, and much more reliable. Let's try the brew chamber motor with the drive spindle and the movement of the coffee outlet, and see maybe with our parts this works. It could work even better than recommended by the MIT, and it did really. So it was at the end, this prototype which we were designing was assembled more than 60% with components coming from a coffee machine. So this means we knew how the motors and the forces is working, and where is the stress, and where is the wear and tear parts. And we were able to send over within 2 weeks the first functional model to Starbucks, which was then the base, of course, to produce medtech products in our industry with all the certification. Of course, they did at NSF, they did a special approval, but only for the US, not for the Europe. And we were then helping. Of course, it was also not possible to travel at the time. We were then by Teams calls helping a local manufacturer close to Seattle to produce with our prototyping ventilators for the US market, which were then also used during that time. It was at the end 1.5 months after the phone call, the first ventilator were installed or were helping patients of this COVID illness and saved lives. It was one of the learnings for Thermoplan, for myself. You see, of course, we do always these strategic meetings and the visions and so on, but I have never been open-minded enough to be considering, even considering that Thermoplan could also produce something for the medtech industry. But after this experience, of course, we learned that our R&D is capable to do even more that we expect, and I think this I learned, but also I learned a lot about leadership. Because if you are able to communicate the urgency and the sense of the problem or the challenge, and this with the right people, you can do enormously more than you usually do. Just enabling people to grow further than they are thinking that they can go by have a clear communication of the sense and the teamwork and the spirit helps to create much more than we usually expect. But of course, you cannot do this on a daily basis. I think that was this would be too intense for everyone. But this was a strong learning. Right now, we are in the new building here at Thermoplan, and we got all the certificates to be able also for the future to even design our own medtech products or do collaboration. I think that's so important right now. For example, with having Roche just around the corner in Rotkreuz and other medtech companies to be able, because matter of fact, during COVID, the HoReCa, so hotel, restaurant, and cafe, so our industry was not the real winner because almost all the restaurants were closed over this time. So it was then also coming out of a crisis, a learning. So probably we should also have a clear look on diversity. So what other business model sectors you could bring in your technology? So we clearly said we don't want to go to the automotive, which was a good decision. But MedTech is something which is coming out of this COVID learning, something which is one of our pillars we invest for the future too.
And it's a very good example of the three values that you mentioned earlier: flexibility, fun, user centricity, or user centric. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly, yes. And that's, for me, I'm now 28 years in this industry and this company, but it's all about the teamwork. So right now, of course, with the tariffs, we will probably also come to this topic. There is a lot of uncertainty by myself, or I'm questioning myself. So can I do this? Take the responsibility and what? But always when I open the door in the morning and come to the company and see my people, and it's we call this the Thermoplan family. I know this sounds a little bit crazy. I understand, but together creating new ideas and finding solution for opportunities and sometimes also challenges. I think that's the core of my business. Of course, I love this interaction with customers. I love to travel around, and of course, I love engineering. But at the end, it's all about the people.
Yes, it's all about the people. I could not agree more. Let's take this as a closing statement for the first part of our conversation. Thank you very much, Adrian. And in the second part, we'll talk about the impact of the current US tariffs on your business and a new opportunity that you are seizing, that Thermoplan is seizing, with a new beverage in a new market. And hopefully this new partnership and collaboration will be so successful that it will go all around the world. This episode of the Coffee Chronicles is part of the Food Economy podcast series, produced by Deloitte Switzerland. In the food economy, we explore market trends and the future of food with expert insights. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave a review. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for our next episode and see you next time.